You've probably heard or asked this question before. If God loves us and is all-powerful, why is there so much evil and suffering in the world? It's a tough one. It makes sense that people, believers and skeptics alike, feel drawn to it. It feels like a test of logic, of faith, even of our sense of justice. Let's have an honest conversation about this. Lay aside any fancy language or dramatic flair, and let's walk through a range of perspectives: philosophical, theological, experiential, so we all get to the heart of it. Imagine for a moment you have a robot child who can't choose. It does what you program it to do, but it can't love you, can't surprise you, can't care or rebel. There's no real relationship there, just predictable code. The freedom to choose is what makes real connection possible. If love or virtue is forced, it isn't love or virtue, it's robotic obedience. That's the free will defense, first strongly developed by thinkers like Augustine, and more recently by Alvin Plantinga. They argue, if God gave people real freedom, then we also gave them the ability to choose badly. Without that freedom, all goodness would be fake. It would be like theater. It may look real, but underneath it's scripted. God could make humans who only ever choose good, but they wouldn't really choose. And if free will has value, but includes the risk that we'll do terrible things, it's logically possible that allowing that freedom, with all its risks, is the greater good. Now, some critics say that explains human-caused evil, wars, murders, lies. But what about natural evils? Earthquakes, cancer, tsunamis. Humans don't choose those. True. Many theologians respond in one of two ways. Some point back to Adam and Eve, the fall, and claim natural disasters are part of a cosmic ripple effect. Others suggest demonic forces play a role. Still others say natural disasters create space for growth, both individual and community. Here's another perspective called soul-making, or the Irenaean theodicy, from thinkers like John Hick. The idea: God didn't make humans perfect. They were designed to grow into perfection. Suffering, challenge, setbacks, they're part of that growth process. Imagine a world without any struggle. No compassion, no courage, no empathy, because you never needed them. Sometimes a hero emerges only when the stakes are high. This world, with pain and possibility, is the arena in which moral and spiritual character develops. Think about real life. When you face a crisis, heartbreak, job loss, illness, something inside you stretches. You learn more about what matters. You may reach out to others in ways you never thought you could. You discover compassion, resilience, even creativity where none existed before. That doesn't make suffering fun. It doesn't erase injustice, but it helps us understand that suffering may play a role in a larger picture, a canvas where growth, love, and moral depth become possible. There's another line that acknowledges mystery. God's ways are higher than our ways. Some suffering may genuinely be a part of a greater plan we can't yet see, like a doctor making an incision to save a life. It hurts in the moment, but the outcome is healing. That doesn't mean we worship the pain, but we trust there may be more going on beneath the surface. Still, let's not brush past legitimate objections. A skeptic might say, but why doesn't God just create beings who freely choose good? Many religious thinkers admit this is a valid challenge. But because knowledge and freedom are linked, Plantinga and others argue it's logically impossible. There is no being who is genuinely free and yet incapable of evil choice. Another objection: God seems to intervene sometimes, why not always? Historical stories, Pharaoh's plagues, Jesus calming the storm, suggest God can step in. And yet, when it matters most, famine, genocide, natural disasters, God seems silent. That strikes many as unfair. But some theologians respond, if God constantly intervened, it would destroy the order of nature and undermine human responsibility. If every time someone prayed for rain, God made it rain, religion becomes a manipulative tool, not true relationship. Free will, consistent natural laws, and genuine moral responsibility mean God works within a stable system, not constantly overriding it. Sometimes calling that silent, but maybe it's consistent. Let's talk about human examples. A person survives a series of tragedies, illness, accident, loss, and chooses to mend others. A healer, a counselor, a teacher, they turn pain into purpose. People who band together after disasters, donors, rescue workers, neighbors, reveal the strength of shared humanity. Personal struggles often awaken empathy. When we felt invisible or broken, we reach harder for others in the same place. These aren't just philosophical treats. They relived experiences showing how moral and spiritual virtues often come through rather than in spite of suffering. If you're listening and you don't believe in God, some of this might still resonate. You might say, even without God, we see the same patterns. People grow in hardship. Heroes emerge in crisis. Empathy thrives when others suffer. That's a powerful confirmation that something real lifts us out of pain. Whether it's cosmic story or human story, suffering shapes us. I want to circle back to a question many raise. Is God then the author of suffering? That phrase is heavy, but often misunderstood. Yes, God created free creatures who can choose evil. Yes, God allowed natural laws that cause disease or disasters. But that doesn't mean God delights in suffering. Instead, he allows a system, freedom, moral agency, physical laws, where suffering is a possibility, because the upside, real love, real virtue, real community, is worth it. God's involvement shows in love and presence, even in suffering. Think of Jesus on the cross, or Islamic narratives of trials bringing believers closer to God. These traditions show that suffering is never ignored. It becomes itself a path toward relationship, redemption, character. Finally, there's a challenge to both believers and skeptics, avoiding false comfort and being emotionally honest. There's a difference between saying, there is meaning, and it doesn't matter. When someone mourns, telling them it's part of God's plan isn't always comforting. Sometimes it feels cold. Real comfort sometimes comes from presence, a hug, a meal, shared silence. Faith traditions teach that God doesn't just plan things from afar. God joins us in pain. The cross, Job's grief, the prophet's tears, they show not a distant deity, but one immersed in human suffering and committed through it. So is evil proof God doesn't love us? Not necessarily. It's a challenge worth wrestling with. There are serious explanations, freedom, growth, hidden purpose, that show it is not a contradiction for God to love us and yet allow us to suffer. Does that answer every tear, every tragedy? No. Some suffering feels pointless. Some questions stay deep. But maybe that's where honesty begins. In acknowledging pain, refusing false answers, walking with others, and staying curious, even if perfect clarity never comes. In the end, evil is a sign we live in a world of freedom, of moral choices, of unpredictability. But through freedom comes love. Through suffering comes growth, both personal and collective. And even when we can't see behind the curtains, millions have found meaning, resilience, and goodness rooted in their responses to adversity. And we have to admit, a life without possibility, without challenge, without the risk of evil, would not be real life. It would be an echo. And without real life, there is no real love, no real courage, no real hope. Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful, or if you've got a perspective I missed, drop a comment. Whether you believe or not, asking the question, why evil if God loves us, shapes the way we build communities, comfort one another, and answer the hardest storms together.